Welcome to Torah Smash, the podcast for nerdy Jews, where our lives of Jewish learning collide with our love of nerd culture. In each episode, we discuss what we lovingly call a Torah Smash, which we have defined as a beautiful collision of one thing from the world of Judaism with another from nerd culture. I'm Ethan Lane Miller, and joining me today are
Barack Malkin.
I'm RDY, and I have friends everywhere.
So, what are we here to talk about today, we think?
Friendship.
Yep. Friends everywhere. Have we all seen Andor?
I watched 7 episodes today.
That's a heavy meal.
It was so good. I think Andor is probably the best Star Wars property to date. Andor season 2 specifically.
Yeah, I would agree. I've seen the whole thing. I did not do a binge of the second season. I sparingly did it over a few lunches over the past few weeks. But yeah, season 2, I think was better than season 1, but I don't think season 2 would have been as good without season 1.
For sure.
Agreed.
Also, I don't think season 2 would have been as good without Rogue One.
No, of course not.
Totally agreed. Yeah. So, I will say though, because of Rogue One, like there was a scene in the last or second to last episode where Andor was being held at gunpoint and it had absolutely zero stakes in it. Like I had no worries that Andor was going to be shot in the head.
Oh, during the attack in the square when he was in the restaurant?
Yes.
What was more interesting for me was not if he gets out of it, but how and what happens in the process.
I knew that someone else was going to shoot him, but I in my head I called the wrong character.
Oh. Would you call that, would that be literally calling your shot?
Yes, it would. And I called it wrong. I called the right shot, wrong trigger.
Who'd you think it was going to be?
I thought it was going to be Bix. I thought she was going to come back.
Oh, wow. Just arrive on
Ghorman. I thought it was going to be Bix, and I thought she was going to also die in that battle, and like that way not have the continuity into Rogue One.
Yeah.
So I watched this on the evenings it came out because it came down after sundown. I referred to it, much to the delight of my coworkers, as Erev Andor.
Nice.
And on Friday, as a little Shabbat for myself, I rewatched Rogue One. And
I wish I could have done that. Yeah.
It hits differently.
Oh.
Right out from the gate, when Cassian meets the contact on the Rings of Catherine, and the contact brings up Galen Erso, suddenly Cassian's reaction of, what did you just say? Like, who did you just say? Becomes even more elevated.
Man.
When we understand that this is a thread that just got dangled in front of him a couple days ago.
That's so cool.
I wish I could have rewatched Rogue One. There's a lot of pieces I knew that Galen Erso was a big piece of Rogue One, but he never came up during the series. And so I assumed like at some point, but to see that happen of his reaction has got to be such a better experience.
Yeah. I wanted to watch Rogue One when this was over as well, but I was a little TV'd out by the time.
I understand. And I use the phrase heavy meal very intentionally.
Oh yeah.
It's a lot to digest and it is heavy.
It was really heavy and so beautiful. And like, I can't wait for this to see what you're smashing it with.
Well, I mean, this is not necessarily a specific smash.
It's an Ethan smash.
I'm looking to just tease out all the little Jewish threads that I think are intentionally and in some places unintentionally woven into the fabric that is Andor.
I feel so. Hold on. You're saying woven into the threads and all these pieces. Are we going to be talking about like Jewish, like the Ghorman was fully around clothing and fabric and weaving? Are we having some sort of conversation on Jewish clothing?
No, you're being too literal.
Oh, okay. I also just came off of editing with our listeners would have already enjoyed editing our anniversary episode in which RDY spent the majority of those 2.5 hours just making as many clothing and tailor puns that he could. And so that is top of mind for me right now.
I was just trying to weave them in wherever I could.
Yeah. All right. So it's not Jewish clothing. RDY, do you have a guess?
I noticed and maybe this is a product of watching it almost all at once. I mean, I on Thursday afternoon we reminded each other that we were doing this, and so I watched an episode Thursday, two Friday night, two Saturday night, and seven today. So one of the things that I noticed was a running theme was, what do the characters give up in order to have a successful rebellion? And Jewishly, I think if you are going to live a Jewish life, there are things that you give up. And there are things that are much greater that happen to us as a community because we are living a Jewish life. But there are things that we don't do that we might want to do, like, like for me, I don't check email on Saturday, and that means that I might miss out on a thing. And that's a part of my Shabbat practice that connects me to the community. But or like attending a service. When you go to a service, you're not doing all of the other things of the world. And when we live in certain places that have certain offerings, like all of the concerts that come through the city that I'm living in right now, Austin, Texas, I don't go to them on Friday nights, and I don't go to them when I have a Shiva Minyan, and I don't go to them, when I'm caring for the community. But the bonus is I'm able to care for the community and do the greater good of being present when people need a minyan.
I love that so much. I definitely also honed in on the idea of sacrifice, but I took a different perspective on it. And I'd love to chat this plus everything else out with you.
Wait, so if you didn't make the tailoring puns, I would have said the difference between choice and fate. That felt like a very strong theme for me as well.
That's not quite what I was aiming for, but this is all great. And like I
like
literally have several things I want us to talk about, but my take on the sacrifice was that there were many people who got to glimpse the promised land but not enter it.
Oh, that's nice.
During season 2?
Yeah. And I'm slightly extending into Rogue One. I'm cheating slightly.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think your Rogue One may be skewing your vision of Andor season 2, because it ends us with they are beginning to gather the pieces, but they are still pretty deep in a hole with fading hope.
I mean, I think for some of them, yes. But I think of people like tangentially Cinta, but primarily Lonnie and Luthen, who were so close to seeing the promised land and didn't make it.
Yeah, Luthen was the one that popped right to my head when you said that. And I would say on the other side of the story, I think the same thing with Deidre, because she was going for her goal for the Empire, and because she got thwarted, she almost saw the Death Star being constructed and almost was a part of that leadership, and then got caught
She messed up pretty
being,
badly.
being a bad guy. Evil doesn't pay.
Unless they're buying antiques from Luthen.
Well, even then that didn't quite work out. I mean, let's start with Lonnie. In season 1, he wanted to get out and be done with what was going on. And it led to the greatest monologue, I think, certainly in the first season, if not the entire show, where Luthen goes on about what he has sacrificed.
Yes. Yeah, in the elevator or something like that in the first season.
Yeah, the elevator.
Yes, and that like thinking of that monologue helped me form the idea that I was talking about earlier with giving things up. Like everyone gives up something. The montage at the end too, with all of the people with their various losses and plans, and like looking forward, looking back. And the one that hit me pretty hard was Mon Mothma's husband, sitting in the car with that other woman who was like drunk on his shoulder, and that's what Mon Mothma lost. What she gave up for the rebellion was her relationship with her husband, which
Yeah.
looked like it was fraying a little bit. Whether there were points where I couldn't tell if they were being playful or hurtful.
Well,
I think a little bit of both.
Yeah.
He also looked like he wasn't happy with where he ended up.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And also her daughter.
Yeah.
They shot but ultimately did not use a scene of her getting a goodbye with her daughter and husband.
I'm glad you said that, Ethan. I was missing that thread.
Yeah. They ultimately decided it didn't fit with the episode.
Well, yeah, because she ended where she didn't want to end, right? She ended drunk at the wedding, and she didn't want to be drunk at the wedding. And her daughter was like, I wish you were drunk. And then,
well, I think by the end of it, she did want to be drunk at the wedding.
Well, yeah, she did. She gave her daughter her wish. It's her wedding day.
I don't think that's what she meant, but
you don't think so?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Well, because her mother was saying, my mother was saying, oh, my mother was drunk at the beginning, at the point where she was, here comes a maiden, and that I think the daughter was saying, I wish you were drunk now so that you wouldn't have said something so stupid. Do you think the baby at the end was a loss for Cassian or a gain?
Oh man, that's so.
I think
Can I cheat and say both?
Oh,
I that's why I asked, because I don't know.
Well, he doesn't know, right? We know, and you're going, oh gosh, I hope he gets back, but then he's not going to get back, right? And so it's sort of showing us that he is going to live on through that family in some way. We don't know the baby's name. I'm assuming in the Star Wars universe, the baby is somehow named for Cassian in some way. But the idea that he's lost it, he lost Bix and therefore lost this family that he could have had. But he doesn't, and she made that choice for him. And so he didn't really give anything up. He wanted to follow her, but in a whole galaxy, how would he know where to go?
And you know how when you see a character's resolve happen in a way that's different from what you imagine, like I had said, I thought Bix was going to come in, save the day, and die. I think their ending for her was way better.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah. And that shot, like, I teared up at that point again.
So, do you have another bit of trivia? Perrin was not in the back of a speeder with a random woman. That is his son-in-law's mom.
Oh, what?
Oh, who I didn't recognize her as the son-in-laws. So that's his metachtonim.
For Jason, definitely not for me.
Jason, that
yeah.
is a Hebrew word for in-laws, but it's like the side of the in-laws that are not your family. So like your son-in-law is your family, but then the rest of the in-law family is like the metachtonim.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah, I did not catch that at all. Because I don't think she had any speaking lines.
I don't know that she did.
Yeah.
So lots of sacrifice. I think of Lonnie, who had wanted out for so long, and he did end up giving his life, although it's very strongly implied that Luthen's the one who silenced him.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Who else?
He wouldn't have given his own life. He was trying to find protection for his family.
Yeah. And
then
I was thinking about like the only other option would be some sort of sniper, but they would have taken out Luthen.
Exactly. And to me, the tragedy is that while he died, I wonder to myself if that saved his wife and child. Because the ISB knew that Lonnie gave this information up, and they knew that he was a traitor. And I wonder if, in a roundabout way, Luthen delivered his wish of saving his family, because it meant that ISB had no reason to pursue his family.
Right, no reason to threat but information was known. Yeah.
I like that enough that I will consider it that way.
It makes it a little easier to digest.
Yeah. That was one of those, in the beginning of Rogue One, Cassian shoots somebody, and it seems a little bit too much.
Yeah, he shoots a rebel informant in the back.
Right. And I think all of the leading up to Rogue One with this series, I understood it better that he might do that. At least I understood that it was his character. It doesn't make me okay with it completely, but it softens it a bit.
Well,
Yeah.
he definitely ended there of like shooting Mon Mothma's driver, as
Mhm.
opposed to very early on, he did not want to partake in the fight. He was like a behind the scenes rogue and
Right.
criminal, and he slowly became the front man and having to make those hard decisions.
Oh yeah, the zero hesitation taking out the driver spy.
Yeah.
Can I say something more happy?
Sure, we'll bring it back.
I was so thrilled to hear Alan Tudyk's voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Initially I was like, oh, why can't they just do a property without constantly tying into other properties? But man, as soon as Alan Tudyk comes into the frame, I was like, oh, of course, no, 100% you needed to bring
Yeah,
him in. He's a fantastic character. 100%. I'm so glad they did.
me too. And as soon as we saw all those K units, I'm like, oh, one of those is going to be
Yeah.
Nice.
so.
I love that a lot.
Mhm.
For me, there's like the most blatantly obvious Jewish connection, and we haven't brought it up yet. Any guesses?
Oh, we still haven't made the smash?
Oh no, this is the smash.
Oh gosh, I was like,
I'm-
we're like 15 minutes in.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's the first thing I wrote when I was writing out, what is Jewish in Andor.
The the indecisiveness of his name.
and slash or
Yeah.
Sure. RDY.
something else more obvious than.
When I heard this line, I had to pause the recording
Oh,
and go backwards and make sure I actually heard it. And I did.
Did they say a Jewish line? Nobody can hear you nodding, Ethan.
Oh, I forgot we're in an audio medium.
in
Yeah.
space, no
Yeah.
one can hear you nod.
Yeah.
When Mon Mothma is preparing to give her big speech, and Bail Organa says next year on Yavin.
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
Yes, I 100% caught that as well. Absolutely.
I caught that too. Next year on Yavin.
I mean, there's so much weight tied to it that I think as a Jewish viewer, I think for a lot of people, it'd be like, oh, okay, that's a nice little line. Yes, we'll be united together. But then but hearing it as someone who's Jewish, there was so much resonance to it.
yeah, and such, I mean, clearly not a Jewish character and definitely not a Jewish actor. So to just kind of casually deliver the line made sense for him, who I can only ever think of as Richie Valens, by the way. He played Richie Valens in La Bamba because both
Oh,
of my
yes.
brothers were living
Yeah.
in. Yeah, I definitely perked my ears up, but I don't think they intended it that way because when we say next year in Jerusalem, um, the year after that, maybe a nice cruise, what we mean is that like we're going to be celebrating the same thing that we're doing now, but in a better place. And I don't think that's what they wanted. I don't think they wanted her to risk her life again and give
Just
that.
in a private, secluded planet.
Right.
Yeah.
That's maybe, but like I definitely saw it as a next year may we continue to fight back, find effective ways to resist, and be there together with each other.
It's a great read.
That reminds me, I'm going to spin us back to the unhappy side of this. Discussing that scene also reminds me of a sort of not happy connection that I made that I don't know if you all made. Um, I will start by saying that in a lot of shows nowadays, in fictional shows, I'm reminded too much of the real world. We haven't talked to Daredevil yet. There's so much resemblance of Daredevil to the current world. And there's other shows as well that are doing the same thing where I'm like, I don't know if I want to watch this right now. I had that same thought in Andor. And
At which time, Barack?
in the middle to end of the series, I felt like the Ghorman uprising was a simile, and that the way that media is depicting one side versus the other side, and it felt like the war that is happening with Israel and Hamas and the unfortunate casualties that are coming of those wars, where the media is making one side a certain story. And here's what I'll say is that even though I viewed it in one way, it could be viewed in both directions, where you could view them as the residents of Israel and the residents of Gaza, regardless of where they are, the people on those sides, it just felt so similar to what's going on, where the news reports are portraying their direction for their viewpoint. And we only saw the Empire's side of this, right? We saw vague instances of like the rebellion putting out their news, but nobody listening, right? And so it just felt too much of there is this civilian group of people suffering in a war, and nobody is listening, and they are going to just be a casualty to this greater empire of something that is existing. And it was too close for me, and I did not enjoy the storyline when it got to that point.
Barack, I'm so glad you said that. I made the conscious decision to not bring that up because it's so hard to say this is our side or their side.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Both sides could make the argument that we are the rebels and they are the empire.
Yeah, I think like when you're watching Daredevil, there is a clear connection to what is happening, right?
Mhm.
In this one, I did not know if they were just doing a representation of the world, being that now we're about 2 years past almost, right? Now that we're a year and a half past October 7th, it could have been either side that inspired that storyline. And stepping back and looking at it, I think it could have been either side that created that storyline. And I don't know. And it made me so uncomfortable with myself not knowing, because it's so difficult of a situation.
So I think that this is, and I've said it before, this is why science fiction is so incredible, is that it is able to provide allegories and viewpoints in ways that other stories aren't able to. What I do know is Tony Gilroy, the creator of Andor, was asked this very question.
Really?
And yes, he was. And he very politely said, I wasn't really pulling inspiration from one particular thing.
That's
What he did,
dodge.
what he did very clearly say was that the Imperials are Nazis.
Okay.
That he very clearly said.
Okay.
In an article I accessed from forward.com, and this is from Tony Gilroy speaking to the Hollywood Reporter. Quote, the very first scene that Krennic has where he talks about Ghorman, that's based on the Wannsee Convention, the Nazi convention where the Nazis got together and planned the final solution over a business lunch. That is straight from Tony Gilroy.
It's also pretty much canon that Lucas modeled the Empire after the Nazis. Like it's something that I don't think he's ever flat out said, but it seems clear from the original trilogy that that's the case. And I want to go back to the Israel versus Hamas thing for one quick second, though, to kind of disagree with your point, Ethan, about science fiction being so good at allegory, because I don't think there is any allegory that is any good at being a parallel for the situation in Israel. There just are too many complexities to boil it down to allegory, and too many things that have happened over the course of the last 2,000 years for us to be able to say, oh, this is this.
So maybe allegory isn't the right word, but we have the ability to project or feel represented. I do choose to believe that Tony Gilroy was being a little evasive, but also truthful, that he didn't base the Ghorman massacre specifically off of one current event, and that the Imperials are Nazis, and that it's directly, inspired seems like a gross word, but like reflective of World War II. Like I saw the Ghormans as the French, which was clearly very upfront. And so I saw them as the French resistance.
I totally agree with the French assessment, Ethan. Their language sounded like French.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, very, very intentionally done that. Like I think anyone can look into the Ghorman massacre and have some valid takeaways. For me, it really feels World War II to me.
Yeah. I remember when episode 2 came out and Bush Jr. was president, and someone made a comment to Lucas about how someone on the Bush team had said that President Bush was insulted by him doing what was clearly a parody of his government. And Lucas was like, I wrote this story 30 years ago about a corrupt government taking unnecessary power. And if you see a parallel in that, that's not on me.
That's a great answer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and there's Revenge of the Sith, where we get only a Sith deals in absolutes, which came out right after Bush said you're either with us or you're against us.
And that was that episode 2?
That was episode 3.
Oh, okay.
We might be referencing the same thing, but yeah. Anakin says you're either with me or against me, and Bush said something pretty similar. So like, look, there's again, if it's not allegory, there are parallels everywhere. I mean, why would we think of parallels of fighting an overreaching fascist regime right now? Like, why would that be relevant to us today?
Why indeed? I want to go back to the Jewish stuff. I have one thing, with all apologies to the original Karen, but Edie Karn.
Oh my God, yes, I so want to talk about her.
Who's Edie Karn?
Cyril's mom.
Yeah, Cyril's mom.
Oh, okay.
And when I say all apologies to the original Karen, my mother's name is Karen, and she was probably the first. And Edie was so painful to watch. Not because my mother really is like that, just because I like to make fun of her that she is, but the way that Syril was so manipulated by her and then fell in with the wife that ended up being equally manipulative in a different way, but strong enough to stand up to Edie and say, I will make sure that he gives you what you want if you stop being such a Karen. So, Jewish mothers have a rap. How many Jewish mothers does it take to screw in the light bulb? No, I'll just sit here in the dark.
So let's call the question.
Okay.
Is Cyril's mom Jewish?
Her name is Edie. It's a bit of a, Jewish old lady name.
Karn is pretty close to some Jewish celebrity names.
Khan.
I was also thinking Cone.
Yeah.
So let me ask the next question then. Is that an offensive stereotype?
Yes, 100%.
I didn't view her as Jewish. I'll say that. I think, she was small in stature and had a sort of shrill New York voice-ish, but her personality to me did not come across as Jewish.
So, Barack, you're saying she was more Napoleonic?
Yeah.
Going back to the French?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Right. Yes, she had the overbearing and the guilt stuff, but it didn't seem like it was done with love. And that is where it diverts for me from being a Jewish mother.
Yes. Yes. Our mothers do things with love. I love you, Mom.
So I agree. I think there are a lot of parallels with Jewish moms, but I think you're onto something, Rock, about their love being missing there. She clearly cares for Syril and loves him in her own way, but there were some parallels there.
I think when you have to caveat love with in someone's own way, we're already acknowledging a problem.
Yeah. Let's see. So I wrote down Clea and Cassian honoring their parents in different ways.
Cassian. I like that.
Didn't we start this episode that this smash was about sacrifice?
That was me.
Oh. Wait, what was Ethan's original smash?
what his original smash was. What do you think? You like this is an Ethan smash where it's letting her
Oh,
all the
is
things.
this episode just exploring all of the different options?
You say just, Barack.
Mm-hmm.
When I say Ethan smash, I want it to be clear, Ethan and Barack, that when I say the phrase Ethan smash, I'm being complimentary to the
Yeah.
nine.
Thank you.
So this
Please,
is
Barack, please don't cut that.
yeah. So I was just trying to figure out where the thread is, not a Taylor pun. And
It's truly exploring where does Andor smash in with Judaism.
yeah, here's what the reason I was asking is that it feels like we're sort of in this like buffet line of Andor, and we're taking a little bit of this and or that.
Ah, like what
Yeah.
you did there,
Yeah.
Barack. Um, I think that's also kind of the drawback and or bonus
Mm-hmm.
of talking about 12 episodes of Andor in one episode of Torah Smash.
And those 12 episodes are essentially 4 movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And for me, 6 through 8 was where I fell in love with the movie.
Are you talking about the Ghorman massacre arc? Those 3?
It's leading up to the Gorman. Yes, it ends with the Gorman massacre. So yes, episodes 6 through 8 leading up to and ending with the Gorman massacre. With episode 9 being the twisting it, and I believe between 8 and 9 were one of those jumps where it went from BBY 4 to BBY 2. And for Susan, BBY in Star Wars parlance is before the Battle of Yavin or the end of Star Wars A New Hope.
I mean the arcs are in 3 episodes, so the jump would be between 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it would have been
One,
the
two,
jump
three,
between
four, five,
6
six,
and
six
7.
and 7. Okay.
I
Yeah.
mean,
And
six is where the Gorman raid on the Imperial weapons goes awry. And I mean, I could do a whole episode about Cinta and Vel. I mean, that I had a long talk with my therapist after that one. That was, and I'm being genuine. Like that was something else.
yeah, I was incredibly teary when Cinta not only was shot, sorry, spoiler alert, not only was Cinta shot, but with friendly fire.
Yeah.
Like that Val didn't say all the things she could have said in that monologue was just brilliant writing. All the things that she was holding back in her fury,
Yeah.
acknowledging all the things she did say. And you'll live with this your entire life. You will carry her with you forever. That to me is a very Jewish way of expressing a lack of tshuva. There's no way to do tshuva here. There's no way to repent and take this back because she cannot come back to life.
Yeah, her monologue. That's what got me. I mean, Cinta's death was hard, but it was Vel's reaction that was just incredible writing, incredible acting, like everything.
I want to also bring us back to the theme that I had seen about choice versus fate. There's a lot of sort of Beshert language throughout, or that
Mm.
idea of where you're meant to be
Oh
based on
yeah,
the situation, right? The seer, I don't know what you'd call her on Yavin,
healer,
right?
force healer.
Yeah, force healer, who was just sort of, you are important. And he's like, I'm not important. Like, that's a big, the reluctant hero sort of situation. But I really kept seeing this idea of people wanting to make a choice and then fate making that choice for them over and over and over again.
Speaking of the force healer, I loved that she was dressed in red because in Rogue One, anyone in red was touched by the force.
Oh,
Interesting.
interesting.
Yeah.
Nice.
All of the characters who were either force attuned or force believers or whatever were wearing red. And Jin had red that you didn't see much at all, but it was the lining inside her jacket was red.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, if you want to talk about being a symbol of her connections to the world, wearing red in this universe would be similar to wearing a Jewish star on a chain on our neck or a high necklace or something like that. Lately, the dog tag necklaces that everybody wears.
Yeah. I kept having this feeling of the Beshert throughout, and then I had watched an interview with, I forget which actor who does a lot of voice act work.
Alan
but-
Tudyk?
Nope. A lot of voice act work for Star Wars, and he had said that in a conversation with one of the heads of Star Wars at some point, they explained to him about how the Force works, that Star Wars isn't innately about this battle of good and evil, but it's really
Sam
about
Witwer.
Yeah, that's the one. But it's about the Force is in charge of balancing good and evil. And so as much as the rebellion is pushing for this hope and this change, the Empire is equally doing the same thing. And so neither of them can really have the edge. And so it's constantly giving a push and pull. And that's where I felt underneath this fate decision was being made constantly. When there was traction being made, something would go wrong. And same thing on the Empire side, traction being made, something would go wrong. It just felt like this balance on both sides of them trying to make a choice, but fake making the decision for them.
I like that, Brock.
Yeah.
And I also am reminded of the fact that it's called the light side of the Force and the dark side of the Force, not the good side of the Force and the evil side of the Force.
Yeah.
So a little actually, I believe it's just the Force and the dark side.
Oh,
really?
I'll buy that. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to say Ethan's right, just because he's.
I mean, he has to be.
He's got to be.
I believe. Please write in.
What would we do?
Me.
What would we do if Ethan was wrong about something with Star Wars?
Please write in and tell me if I'm wrong. But I do believe that in canon, it's just the Force and the dark side.
You know what we would do if Ethan was wrong about Star Wars? We would then probably wake up from this nightmare we're in.
On Wikipedia, it says that the light side of the Force is known as Ashla.
Oh, now you're getting into weird Dave Filoni Star Wars now.
Yeah. And Luke does say in Empire, how do I know the good side from the bad?
It's true.
And Yoda says, you'll know when you're calm, at peace, passive. But he
the
doesn't
phrase
say which one that is.
Mm-hmm.
And there's we're getting off the rails here, because the other piece of this is that as a Jedi, you're not supposed to be connected to your emotions. And so the calmness is that you are just accepting the Force as is, as opposed to knowing which side is right, which side is wrong. As long as you were just with the Force, period, that's what Yoda's talking about.
Well, and look, we can go forever, but my little phrase on this is Anakin had a point where he was like, aren't we supposed to be compassionate? And that's an emotion.
I've been thinking a lot lately about the light side and the dark side, as I'm going to call it, and how the people that you see on t-shirts from the Star Wars universe are usually stormtroopers, Vader, Boba Fett, the ones that we would call the bad guys. And it's not very often you see like a t-shirt saying, I'm Luke Skywalker and Luke Skywalker is so cool, because he's not. He's a whiny little farm boy. And I think that like leaning towards the symbols of the dark side in our pop culture is evidence that humans are emotional beings. And there's nothing inherently wrong with being emotional, giving into your emotions, acknowledging your emotions, that it can be actually quite healthy when they are used for positive things. And to just deny your feelings, let them go, is not really the best advice for anyone.
Well, I think it was Dark Helmet when he said, now you see the evil always triumph because good is dumb.
That is a great quote from a fantastic movie.
All right. Really, the only other thing I have to say is, and I didn't notice this until I was reading an interview, but Cassian loses his blaster in the big final scene on Coruscant. And a lot of people didn't clock it. It wasn't until I read an interview with one of the prop masters that Cassian switches to using Bix's blaster at the end of the show.
Oh, I didn't catch that either. That is a subtle piece.
That's really subtle.
And this, it just to pull it full circle, is why I think Andor is the greatest thing Star Wars has ever done. It is both in your face brilliant while also being subtly brilliant. And I think were we to sit here and chew on it more, look at this from truly season 1 to season 2 into Rogue One, that there would be countless things that we could talk about here. But I just
there was another blaster moment too. The other blaster moment was when Vel was looking at all the blasters on the table, and she held up a blaster and says, "Whose is this?"
Yes.
And a hand goes up, but you don't see his face, and then he leans out and it's Melshi. Like I was like, yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I think the thing that I really enjoyed about this, it's what I liked about Rogue One. It's what I liked about episode 3. Very unpopular. Well, the last 10 minutes of episode 3 is that they really do a great job of connecting the story to the next piece that it's going to lead to.
Yeah.
And I do wish that I had a chance to watch Rogue One after watching Andor before us recording, but I will want to go back now before this gets too far out of my head to recognize, like I watched after this ended, I watched the trailer for Rogue One, like little bits and pieces, and the trailer has so many of the same actors and characters, and I just wish that I could go and see this connecting piece. So I want to do that. I hope our listeners do that as well. I think it'll be a really wonderful tie-in. And yeah, as much as I wish these large franchises would give us some new stories already, I thoroughly enjoyed Andor as this connecting piece within this reality.
I hope that we get to see more of several of these characters.
That would be nice if they stayed alive.
I want to see the Clea and Vel buddy frenemies spin-off in whatever medium that is.
I want to see Bix raising little Cass and see what he can do.
I want to see what happens when the Empire is overthrown. Mon Mothma becomes Chancellor, and is she reunited with Perrin and her daughter?
Great question.
I'm being serious. Like, I'd love to see that too. There's so much richness here, and I'm just very grateful to be alive at the same time that Andor came out.
Yeah. And the beauty of Andor makes the end scene in A New Hope all the more ridiculous, because we know how much all of the people who are lined up to watch this medal ceremony and all that they've given up and all the people who've died and all the sacrifices they've all made, and this farm boy and a smuggler get all the credit.
I assume that Clea got her medal off screen.
She better have.
Or actually, and I could see Clea doing this, refusing.
I could see that.
Like legitimately, Clea would refuse.
Yep.
100%. All right, y'all. Anything else?
No, this was fun. Yep. Thanks, Ethan.
Anytime. That'll do it for this episode of Torah Smash. Our fiscal sponsor is Jewish Creativity International. Our theme music was created by Sean Fogel. You can check out Sean's bands and studio work at www.thesleepywest.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to rate and review us wherever you listen. It helps others find us and is an excellent way to support the podcast. We want to hear from you and continue today's nerdy discussion. Go to torahsmash.com to find where to connect with us online, purchase swag from our store, support us with a donation, find previous episodes, and more. And did you know that Cassian Andor was a Jewish immigrant? It's true. They changed his name when he went through the immigration process. It was originally Cassian Grammatical Conjunction.
You were proud of that?
100%.
I
so
liked
good.
it.
What's her name? The bad guy girl.
Deidre.
Deirdre,
if you're British.
Oh, okay.
So I do have another little bit of trivia.
Wait, do it again without eating.
What
are you doing tonight? The whole post credit is going to be your chewing and your gulping.
Oh,
well,